Welcome back to another episode of Freeform AI. My name is Michael Burke, and I do data engineering and machine learning at Databricks. Today, I'm not joined by my co-host or a guest. This is going to be a solo episode, which is kind of new, and hopefully it will provide some value. So I just hit my 4-year mark at Databricks, and for this event, I decided to write a blog post. I've had a Medium blog for a while now and haven't published in a while. And I figured it was a good time to reflect on the last 4 years, some of the learnings and skills that I've gained along the way. And also, just for context, I've been trying to work with more junior engineers and provide mentorship. So these are a lot of the topics and questions that come up in those conversations. So we'll keep this quick and hopefully relatively anecdotal, but there are 8 total tips that I listed. And taking a step back before you roll your eyes, I think more than anyone in the whole world, I hate the 5 tips for career advancement or whatever. But at the same time, I also like lists. I think they're satisfying to a human brain. And all of these are actually very genuine and have been integral inflection points for me. And I've spent a lot of time on them. So feel free to roll your eyes, but also I think a lot of these are actually very insightful and useful and have dramatically impacted how I think about work in general. So let's start off with tip number 1. It is titled, "You are less important than you think." And the reason I think that is, well, after I graduated college, I was very hell-bent on making an impact. There was this perception that all these lone wolf type of founders and engineers go in to this really fancy cabin in the woods for a weekend and come back with the internet or Facebook or Google or whatever it might be. And it was a very humbling experience to realize that that is not the case at all. A lot of iteration and implementation is collaborative. And no good idea that I have ever been a part of at Databricks has been successful without a lot of other people. And so while you are important and you can definitely make impacts here and there, you are very much a product of your surroundings. And I definitely recommend that you guys, if you are feeling like I did after college, take a little bit of humble pie, take a dose, and understand that you are dependent on other people and you work as a team. And so, what this tangibly can take the form of is sort of relaxing. I felt that there was a lot of pressure on my shoulders, and I worried that if I failed, it was because of me, and if I succeeded, it was because of me. And so I had a lot of agency and thereby pressure. You can only control the controllables, and there's so many things in life that are out of your control. So understanding that is, I think, essential. And as a recent grad, I definitely under-indexed on that. So that's one piece. And then the final piece I want to say about this tip of you are less important than you think. It's really fascinating to understand how much has come before you. And to me, this is sort of a transcendent, community oriented, belonging oriented feeling where I could not exist in this world or do a single thing that I did without humanity and without nature and without the world. And the example that I cite in the blog is, all right, I'm recording this on a podcast service called Riverside on a computer with the internet. I have a coffee to my left. I have a glass of water to my right. I had no part in implementing any of these features or any of these physical items. Like some human invented coffee a while back, another human invented a glass to put liquids in. And then the computer and the internet are more modern examples, but we really stand on the shoulders of prior implementation. And then if you think about software, that's a really good use case where we start off with a bunch of ones and zeros, go up to assembly, go up to all the way up to higher level languages like Python, which is what I code in daily. So it's really sort of nice to feel the predecessor's impact on your current work. And I value that. All right. Tip number 2 out of 8. Ask for forgiveness, not permission. And this is a very common adage that I think misses the point unless you think about it deeply. So the basis of why asking for forgiveness, not permission is important is humans tend to over-index on being reprimanded. Getting in trouble isn't fun, and no one likes it. So we typically decide to not do something instead of doing something. Or if we are going to do something, we want to make sure that it's all okay. And the basis for my statement on this is the human brain evolved on the African savanna. We were designed to run away from lions and gather food and find water and things like that. And so when something is stressful, it's life or death. In the modern world, 99.9% of your problems will not be at the same severity as what your brain was evolved to feel. So there's been a bunch of studies, and the social interactions back in the day were really, really valuable. If you were not liked by your group, you might get kicked out, and that was life or death. But if someone is mad at you in the modern world, it is rarely life or death. It might be, but it rarely is. And so your brain has evolved to over index incorrectly on getting scolded or getting chastised. And so being aware of this very natural and very normal bias to over index is important to note. So that's the basis. And then, all right, if you're going to be taking a bunch of shots, to further prove this point, a lot of the distribution of return laws are not uniform. So what does this mean? Well, there are countless examples where a small set of the things provide the majority of the value. So think a ETF, or like a stock fund, or a VC fund, or a list of products that are built by a company. See how much they return to the bottom line of the company, whether it be finances or whatever their KPIs are. So with this uneven distribution, you need to take a lot of shots. And because you need to take a lot of shots, it's really important to think about why you don't take shots. It's not just time. It's not just execution quality. It's often a lot of psychology around what if I fail, or what if someone doesn't like what I do. So to properly leverage the fact that there is a uneven distribution of returns in a lot of work, you really need to be aware of the limitations of your unconscious and emotional brain. So that's that. In summary, just reading through the blog, take calculated risks to be aware that you're likely to over-index on the fear of being reprimanded. And anecdotally, if I had always asked for permission before starting a project, I'd have less than a quarter of the total reps. I really like just doing something, and if it doesn't work out, all right, someone's like, hey, you wasted your time, or that probably wasn't a good idea, or whatever it might be. But just try stuff, and like don't explode or like overly break things, but take calculated risks. Cool. That's tip 2. Tip 3 of 8 is spend more time understanding the problem. So I got this tip from probably about 6 months ago. I was listening to one of the OpenAI or Anthropic, like fancy people who do model training. And model training is so freaking expensive. Every time you kick off a run, you're spending millions of dollars, if not more. And so just like with hardware, because the iteration cycles are so expensive, you really need to make the right bets. And I think I don't know much about the medical trials world, but I think it's pretty similar. Like if a medical experiment is going to take 3 months, you need to do as much upfront prep to anticipate whether something is going to work. And with software, that is very much not the case. You can iterate really fast, you can scale really fast, and a lot of software engineers don't really take this approach. However, there's a middle ground. We're not working with hardware. We're not working with medical trials. We're not working with LLM training, probably. Instead, we're typically building stuff with code. And because it's so easy to build, especially with Gen AI, I have very much noticed that people over-index on the building phase. So psychologically, it's really fun to build. I think a lot of people are in this building and engineering and data science space because they like the result and they like the process of creation. However, your job is to solve problems. Your job is not to build something. So taking an extreme example, if I clap 3 times and the feature is built versus if I code for a week and the feature is built, which one do you want? And furthermore, if you go one level deeper, a simpler solution is almost always objectively better if it has the same result. So all this to say, people tend to be too quick to build solutions and should more or spend more time in the problem space, which is uncomfortable. It lacks clarity. You have to be curious. You have to operate in a different mode than just the building mode, which is like a very directed flow state. The problem space, you have to like explore edge cases and like modify your understanding of the world and the problem and everything else. And it's not always super fun, but being aware of this discomfort and simply labeling it helps you stay in it for longer and avoids going down the incorrect path. All right. That is tip 3. Tip 4 out of 8, how to prioritize projects. So AI for deployed engineering at Databricks has a very simple heuristic for which projects to work on. It is impact times visibility minus effort. And this is just a concept. So impact is generally the value that it will provide. It could be to stakeholders, to your team, whatever. Visibility is the amount of people that will generally see it. And finally, effort is the amount of time it will take to build and maintain the solution. And these are all concepts. Like, you can't actually plug in a value for like 7 weeks of effort and then 700 people will view the solution. Instead, these are sort of scales of 1 to 10. So, or high, medium, low. So if the impact is high, the visibility is high, it's a valuable project, even if the effort is high, because impact and visibility are multiplicative. If the impact is high, but the visibility is low, again, because they're multiplied by each other, it's a lot less valuable. And so effort will negatively bias those two terms. And so using this framework is just really easy and really simple because visibility, unfortunately, does matter. You do have to make sure that it gets out into the right hands. You can't just build a perfect thing in isolation. So it's kind of as simple as that. And this, just taking a step back, this was coined by Brooke Wenig, who's the director of AIFDE, and it's a really good lens to work on. So it helps you understand sort of the trade-offs of ROI and really defines R, the return, in a clear way as impact times visibility. Super simple, super useful. All right, 5th. So most important stuff takes hard work. All right, I'm going to tell a little bit of a story. So as I mentioned earlier, as a college graduate, I was hell-bent on making an impact, starting a startup. I literally had a goal of create the most impactful environmental company in the world and save the oceans, which, looking back, is kind of cute. I'm still working towards that, to be clear, but it's such a uninformed goal that it's not realizable at all. And I'm fine with general goals for sure, but that was sort of my mindset coming out of college. I was very much the main character, and I very much thought that I could make a dramatic impact. I don't disagree with that now, but I understand that it will take hard work. So throughout my whole life, I've worked on nonprofits, volunteered, built technical solutions. Just to name a few, I worked with Learn to Be, education nonprofit. I built out their KPI stack so they could make better decisions. So knowing like, all right, how many hours of tutoring are being implemented, and how many like students are on the platform. And it was a free online tutoring service run by volunteers. After that, I decided to try to take a lot of these nonprofit projects that I do in my free time to Databricks. And this has evolved into something called Databricks for Good, which is our nonprofit services arm, where we give free services and compute discounts and things. And it's still very early in the stages of the program, but it's growing really nicely. And throughout the past 3 years, I have been working my absolute ass off to get this done. I think it's really fun. I also think it's very important. And for other psychological reasons, I'm very invested in it. So about 2 or 3 years ago, I came across this project called Virtue Foundation. And Virtue Foundation looks to pair volunteer doctors to hospitals in need. So it's sort of like mission trips where you go to Mongolia, do a week straight of surgeries, save 20 lives, come back, feel good about yourself. And they also have a very rich data ecosystem and a variety of other services. But that's sort of the short of what Virtue Foundation looks to do. I was like, great, another nonprofit that I can help. I got buy-in from my manager to tap some of our team for new hire onboarding, giving them the opportunity to work with more senior people and learn about how we do work at Databricks while giving pro bono or free services to Virtue Foundation. And this was meant to be sort of a 6-month project, and it's turned into a 2-year project, and led me to get quite burnt out. This was typically nights and weekends. People didn't, like my manager and executives didn't approve of basically cutting my current projects until much later to focus on nonprofit work. And that makes sense. Like, that's not my job. My job is to work as a forward deployed engineer, not do cool side projects all the time. And if I had known how much work this program would take, I would have approached this very differently. I treated it like a sprint from the beginning and kept getting burned along the way, then had to basically regroup. And this led to objectively burnout. It's a bummer, but I just like didn't really enjoy work for a while, and I'm enjoying it again. So the tangible takeaway here is that people tend to rush into things as well. So there's a bias for inaction at times, but there's also a bias for action. And if you can control the system and the thing you're building with a lot of certainty, then you're more likely to be able to make impact in a sustainable way. However, a lot of the important stuff depends on factors outside your control, and you can't always rush those things. So if I need to build a feature, and once the feature is built, everything is complete, great. But if I need process to change, or organizational culture to change, or other people to like the idea, that takes time, and it's also outside of your control. So understanding how much is in your control versus outside of your control, and allocating the amount of expected effort and sort of mentally preparing is really, really important. And for me, looking back, I tend to get into things that I work on that I would not have chosen to work on if I had known how much effort it would have been. But I am grateful that I have done the work that I have. So hopefully that's a helpful anecdote. I don't know how applicable it will be to everyone, but the differentiation and like the one-liner of this is when there are external factors, take the level of effort with a grain of salt because the external factors are outside your control. All right. Moving on to tip 6 of 8. This was actually a podcast episode probably about 3 or 4 months ago that really made some dots connect for me, and it was Ben's advice. So one common attribution error is people see a colleague doing something that they don't like, and they either assume malice or malintent, or they assume incompetence. And that is sometimes true, but the root issue of all of that is not that the person has malice or malintent, but that the system has failed. The problem is always the system. And Ben gave an example of, all right, if you're at a coffee shop and the barista makes coffee that you don't like, well, does the barista suck, or did the coffee shop fail to train them or give them the right beans or give them the right equipment? And when it's phrased like that, it's like, oh, of course. Like, it's not that hard to make a pretty good coffee. So if the coffee sucks, it's because of the system of the coffee shop. And you can take this sort of more and more layers of meta. So there's a graphic in the blog, which is there's a person messing up in the middle. And there are all these external factors that might be influencing that. So company goals. There's a natural human rate or human error rate. Like people will just naturally make mistakes. Also limited time. Like you only have 24 hours in the day and people have lives. Sometimes you want to do other things like play with your dog or eat some sushi or whatever it might be. So just personal preference. And then context switching. Like depending upon the job title, you might be doing many different things. And so if a human makes an error, yes, they are accountable for that error. But if you're looking to resolve at the root the reason that the human made the error, reprimanding the person doesn't really do much. It's important to have feedback and make sure that they're aware of it. But a much more effective solution is try to root cause the system. And this can be collaborative. So let's make this a very tangible example. I am the tech lead for a project, and I have a engineer that's working on the project that shipped a regression and caused a production outage. So meaning the really important app is now down and users can't access it at all. Well, I could go in and be like, hey, engineer, what the fuck? Why is this broken? Or I could take a step back and be like, engineers probably shouldn't be able to break prod. Like that's not a thing that should be allowable in our system. And so I then take a step back and look at how software is built, how all these implementations, like Google, they don't really have outages. Facebook, don't. I mean, they probably do sometimes, but they don't really have outages either. So this is a solved problem in industry, and our system is not conducive to avoiding prod outages because, again, humans should not be able to do that. So tangibly, you add a bunch of tests. You're like, all right, make sure that all the code works. Then you also deploy new environments. So a staging environment that mimics prod that ensures that everything is working. If that deploys and is successful and you can sort of click around, all right, prod might have bugs, but it won't be a complete outage like a blank page. And there are all sorts of systems that you can implement so that these types of issues don't happen. So while the human might be a problem, the system is almost always the root problem. And creating systems that make doing the right thing easy, you'll get the desired results much faster and in a more stable way. So finally, just want to handle the caveat that I sometimes think, which is like, sometimes is a strong word. I've actually never thought this in my whole life, but if I were someone else with less emotional skill, I might think this. And the thought is, what if my colleague is dumb? Same thing with the coffee shop. If you take this principle one step further, someone is responsible for their incompetence, but the system is responsible for them making the mistake. And what that means is if they lack the training, that's the system's fault. If they were hired underqualified to grow into the given role, that's the hiring system's fault. So again, you can blame and be frustrated, but the root problem is fundamentally the system. They were either incorrectly placed or they weren't adequately upskilled. So again, this is not dodging accountability. They are still responsible for their actions. But as a team leader, thinking in systems makes these changes a lot more stable and fast. Okay, coming up on the last two. So 7 is be intentional about career growth. I have struggled at times to understand what is authentic and what is sort of posturing and inauthentic. And this will tie in nicely to the eighth and final tip. But often you think that if you just do the right work, you'll get recognized. And I was actually talking to my mom about this like 2 weeks ago. And I was like visiting family and we were in the car and just chatting. And she was like, whoever thinks that is arrogant. And I don't know that I agree, but it is an interesting angle where you say, I do such good work that people are just going to notice and be like, damn, you are so smart. Like, here's a promotion. That's not how humans work. Like, understanding that you are a component of their world and not a large component of their world, probably, is really important. Like, they have 50 other things to deal with. And then also, like, you better be really, really good for people to just be like floored by your work. And it's possible, but you do have to do some sorts of like marketing and ensuring that your work is visible. It's just sort of the world and how humans work. So, with that, I encourage people to overcome this potential feeling of looking for promotions to be disingenuous and just be proactive about it. Like tangible steps are every quarter, every time you complete a significant project, just write it down in resume bullet format with some extra details. When performance reviews come around, you can just reference that document. It's a lot less stressful to compile all your projects. And then also because you have a running tally, you can cross-reference that against job ladders. So hopefully your company provides success criteria for each level, and you can see, I'm strong in area X, but weak in area Y. Let me just see if I can beef up the resume in area Y. So to reiterate, I don't think it's bad at all to strive for promotions, but there is, because of the personal gain nature of a promotion, it's important to do so with integrity and have the interest of the team in mind. If you step on someone to get a promotion, or if you put someone down or make them look bad, that's fucked up. And put simply, like, don't do that. It's really, I don't know, it's just icky, man. And I also think that a rising tide can lift all boats. Sometimes there are toxic cultures where you need to posture and look the part. But it's really just best for everybody to gain from your success as well. So try to find those 1+1=3 types of moments, and have everyone's best interest at heart. Okay, coming on the 8th and final tip: understand personal brand. So at AI FDE at Databricks, or Forward Deployed Engineering, we do an exercise with our managers called your personal brand. What it is personal brand is defined as what people say about you when you're not in the room. And this is a really valuable exercise to understand what you want to be perceived as and how you are actually perceived. So step one is, like typically in a conversation with your manager, or you come prepped, write down the things you want to be known for and sort of define them. So just recalling mine, I prided myself on being a generalist and being a problem solver. So conceptually, I want to be able to handle any problem that comes my way effectively. And it's kind of as simple as that. Like, I don't really care the stack, like technological stack. I don't care if it's using soft skills or technical skills or whatever it might be. I just want to be able to get shit done and be seen as someone who gets shit done. And I chatted with my manager at the time and got some feedback on what people perceive me as versus what I want to be perceived as. And this delta I found really interesting. And there were some areas that I had to grow into. But by looking at this in such a simple and constructive way, you can start understanding where your weakness is, because yes, perception is not everything, but it is relevant. And it is often incorrect potentially, but it is a reflection of your work and who you show up as in the workplace. So I strongly recommend doing this exercise. Again, step one, come prepared and create your personal brand. Step two, review this with your mentor or a trusted colleague. And then step three, just noodle on it, think about it, see if it's something that you want to be supporting or changing, or if it's a thing that, I don't know, maybe is already perfect and the exercise was stupid. But either way, you'll understand how people are perceiving you. And also, it's a nice reflection opportunity to figure out what you value in yourself as a colleague. Final note on this one. So again, for the disingenuous piece, I think a lot of people struggle with handling the concepts of perception. And then people struggle in a variety of ways. I have found that managing perception is really annoying and really hard. And the easiest way to have people think of you in a certain way is to just be that. So if I want to be seen as a good coder, it's easiest to just be a good coder. If I want to be seen as a nice guy, it's easiest to just be seen as a nice guy. Or to just, sorry, excuse me. If I want to be seen as a nice guy, it's easier to just be a nice guy. As long as you're generally visible and generally doing valuable things, if we go back to that formula in tip 4, if you're generally visible and doing valuable things, the brand piece will take care of itself. You control the controllables, which is how you execute and how you position yourself, and let other people's perception come. It's really hard to, navigate psychology when you don't actually walk the walk. But if you do walk the walk, some people will like you, some people won't. But at least you're backing it up, and that is the truth. So I also find solace in that. At least I try to find solace in that. Cool. So those were the 8 tips. I want to also shout out a couple resources. And again, this is on my blog on Medium if y'all want to check it out in written form. But I think we covered all the key concepts here. One thing that I actually didn't include in the blog is the impact of artificial intelligence on the workforce. And there have been multiple moments where I'm like, fuck me, I won't have a job in a week. And then that evolves into, well, I might have a job, I just need to change my skills. And then it evolves into, I'm going to be so good at my job because I'm going to orchestrate 50 agents. And then that cycle just continues and continues as AI gets more advanced. So I do think that the sort of thought-oriented and inside-oriented jobs that are digital are going to dramatically shift. And the way that I'm staying ahead of this is trying to learn fundamental concepts. There are things that AI will get better and better at, but it's hard to know what it will get really good at. And what will be sort of the moat of human value. So right now, just taking a snapshot on July 6th, 2026, I think that coding agents are quite good, but you still have to orchestrate them. You still have to tell them what to build, and you still have to review all their work. So is one line of code going to be bug-free? Probably. But is an entire system going to be bug-free? Almost certainly not. So that's sort of the frontier. And as coding agents get better, and as context injection on what your project is, what your organization is, as that gets better, AI will be able to write more and more code at a higher and higher level. So, all right, maybe I won't need to design or to review a 50-line function in Python, but I'll need to review a design document that then the AI implements and we test to ensure that it works. So, sort of this increasing level of management. But I do think in the next couple of years, there's going to be this sort of inflection point of orchestration and implementation with AI and delegating thought to AI. But there's also going to be an area where humans do have more of a moat. And this could be wrong because if AI is on the exponential, humans may never catch up ever again. But the way that I've been, again, approaching it is just trying to think about what are the fundamental building blocks of value and skill. So there are a few books that I would recommend. One is actually, please just check out the blog because describing the links is going to be hard. But they range from the concept of the flywheel effect, which is as you keep pushing and pushing and pushing on something, nothing happens until boom, the flywheel shoots forward. And this is like a physical system that is a great analogy for work where you need to continuously put in effort and nothing will happen until you reach a activation threshold. Next one is about honesty and like how to give feedback in the workplace. I mean, interpersonal reactions are so important. Another is about systems thinking, as we alluded to earlier. Systems are almost always the root problem. So understanding how systems actually work, and it's just a textbook, but understanding how they work is super valuable. The fourth core concept resource is a classic negotiations book called Never Split the Difference. It's just a fun read, and it explains a bit of human psychology, which is helpful. And then finally, a book called Difficult Conversations. This is maybe one of the best books I've ever read. It's also well-timed in my life right now, but it's tremendously insightful. And all of these are very fundamental concepts that you will need to navigate, even if you're delegating all your work to AI. So that is my final piece, and I hope you enjoyed. So to summarize, we talked about the key career learnings that I've learned over the past 4 years at Databricks working as an AI forward deployed engineer. I've worked with some really smart people and been fortunate enough to learn from them along the way. And while these are corny, potentially, all of them are very genuine and I think have been very impactful and insightful to me. So if it's not hitting and you have a little bit of time and you trust my recommendation, I suggest just thinking a little bit deeper about them. And of course, feel free to reach out via LinkedIn or whatever you're feeling if you have follow-ups. All right. Until next time, it's been Michael Burke, and we'll see you next time.